it can be kind of overwhelming, intimidating to actually take that first step and walk up to a neighbor, knock on the door, and people are fearful of rejection. But I think that what I have known, I mean, in my business, I'm in what I call the people business.
Right.
We spend most of our time building emotional capital. Well, there's no more important capital to build than that of your neighbor, who in a time of crisis is who may be the only person that you have available to you to help you. And so I think that although we're doing a great job, we can always do better. And what I'm excited about, the art of neighboring and what's going on, this movement in Central Texas, is that I believe that this is a seed that can be planted here, that can spread around the country, and that it can not just make Central Texas, Austin, our region, our state, but our nation, especially in these trying times, that much better.
But wouldn't you say also, with 150 people moving into town every single day, there are going to be a lot of people, and especially with life being so time consuming. You're stuck in traffic, you're taking the kids to volleyball, you're at the grocery store, no one gets out of work at 5 o'clock anymore, that simply people don't make the time to go knock on the door and get to know that neighbor.
You know what? I think that you just hit it on the head, that life happens, right? And you hit it on the head that we do have a lot of people moving in here. And I think that right there is the reason that having this conversation and bringing to light the importance of being welcoming, of bringing people together, of telling people, no matter what part of the world they come from, what part of the nation they come from, what part of the state they come from, hey, welcome to this community, welcome to this neighborhood, we're embracing you.
But wouldn't you say, connected with your job, that if we were all more neighborly, or at least the majority of us were more neighborly, crime would go down?
To me, I understand, having worked in safe neighborhoods and some of the toughest neighborhoods, even in the toughest parts of any city, you will find pockets of very safe 2, 3, 4 blocks surrounded by all kinds of violent crime. And you know what the difference is?
What?
Neighbors, family, people taking ownership not just for what's in the 4 corners of their own home, but taking ownership for what's around their home. And what's around you are truly your neighbors. And I think that the more that we get to know our neighbors, the more that we get to get involved with each other, love each other, learn to trust each other, and more importantly, lean on each other, I think the better that neighborhood.
You mentioned one word, one strong word about relationships,
Yeah.
and it's part of being neighborly too, is trust.
Yeah.
Don't you think that's one of the reasons a lot of people just simply won't go knock on the door? They don't know if they can trust those people.
Well, but here's the deal for me. If you don't know if you can trust your neighbor, then you don't even know the type of neighborhood you're living in. You're not well informed. And John F. Kennedy talked about knowledge and, share the knowledge and its power. Well, you need to have knowledge of who your neighbor is. You need to know what belongs in your neighborhood, what stands out, good and bad, what's normal, what's not normal. And so to me, it's like, to not know your neighbor is to not know yourself. Because that neighbor is there, and for me, I want to know my neighbor for several reasons. Number one, I want to make sure that neighbor is somebody I can trust.
Right.
Number two, if there's something that is mistrustful, or there's something I don't understand, or there's something I don't understand about me, I like to resolve issues at the lowest possible level.
All right, somebody's watching right now, and they're seeing that too. And they haven't gone to get
Yeah.
to know their neighbor or neighbors.
This is my brother, this is my wife, this is my child.
Taking the first step,
Absolutely.
the initiative.
The initiative. And the bottom line is that I can't control how people are going to react, but I can control taking that first step. And I think that taking that first step for me says a lot about you, frankly. And what I think people will find is that when they take that first step, they're going to find folks are going to be welcoming, because I think that's truly an innate part of our nature, is that we are social. We like people, we like each other. And I think if you take that first step, what you're going to find is hopefully some pleasant outcomes, and those pleasant outcomes might be a lifelong friend.
Tell me about the Good Samaritan and what that story means to you.
the Good Samaritan story to me, from a biblical sense, is, somebody that ends up victim of a crime back in the day, and ends up basically taken with all his clothing and all his possessions, and is sitting there laying down, and people that you would expect to come and render aid don't, but here comes the Samaritan who lifts him up and gives him aid, and provides the comfort and helps that person who was a victim. And out of that victimization, the way that a Samaritan responded to that victimization was the first step in making that victim become a survivor. And I don't think people realize how important that is. You reap what you sow. You harvest whatever you plant, right? And so there was mom would be taking the soup, would be taking lunch, would be taking breakfast, and so that was something that I did not just learn through scripture, but I learned from watching the behavior of my parents.
And she instilled that in you too, and it's part of you.
Absolutely, and I think it's in all of our DNA. We just have to listen to our inner voice, which I think is coming from up there, that's telling us to do things. There's telling us to do things, and we have to give in to that inner voice and say, you know what? I just found out my neighbor has cancer. I'm going to go over there and lift them up and give them a nice card, or bring up a rose, or say, hey, if you ever need a ride to the doctor, put into place an environment where we all learn that it's not just about us. And so it takes a village to raise a child. I mean, if you look at the difference between successful neighborhoods and successful communities and those that aren't as successful, it's because in communities where the parent is potentially absent or doesn't have the resources, guess what? The stranger that started as a stranger, that became a neighbor, that became a friend, ends up helping to lift up that child. And we all need to be lifted up. And so I think that, to me, this is what this is all about, is lifting each other up, getting to know one another, getting to build that trust, and most importantly, tearing down the walls of mistrust, especially now with some of the issues around the world. So to me, the more that we get to know one another, the more walls are torn down and the better outcomes we all have. And so I'm really excited about what we're talking about here.